Good morning. How are you all? Lovely to see you again. It's a bit of a rain-drenched morning this morning, isn't it? So, yeah, I almost thought I was going to be late today because as I was driving over here, I was driving on my way and there was these big traffic jams and everything. I was thinking, oh no, what's happening? And I need to read on the signs, junctions 18 through 20 and 62 are closed. So I thought I was going to have to jump off and make my way through the back roads, but as it was, things opened up and we're able to follow the road around. So listen, it's great to be here and it's great to be with you all again on a Sunday morning. How many of you guys have been enjoying this summer of sports? I know that not all of you will perhaps be into sport, but yeah, we've had the Euros, haven't we? And we've had the Olympics not so long ago, and we're just coming up to the last few days of the Paralympics. But these past couple of months, there's been a ton of sports happening. And as I was just thinking on, I was really enjoying it. We would sit at home and we would watch it, and my wife and I, and sometimes my daughters. And one particular night stands out to me. I'm not sure if you remember, but on July the 30th, four men, Duncan Scott, Matt Richards, Tom Dean, and James Gray, they won an event. Do you remember what it was? That's right, it was the swimming. It was the 4x200-meter relay. But it was a very unique feat that they accomplished that night. Does anybody know the reason why it was unique? It was the first time that the same four guys had won a relay in the Olympics. So these same four guys had literally won that same race 3 years previous in Tokyo, and then they come back and they do it 3 years later in Paris. The thing that I enjoyed as I was watching that race, though, is that just before the race started, I watched a 10-minute video of this team interacting together. They were joking with one another. They were telling stories about one another. They were sharing their hopes and their dreams and their desires and their aspirations. They were talking about the sacrifices that each of them had made just to be there at that very moment. Their unity, their togetherness, their love for one another helped take them to gold, not only 3 years previously, but on that night on July the 30th. But there was one other thought that really struck me. That night, as they won that event, do you know how many gold medals were given out? It wasn't just 4, it was 6. Why? Because in the heats that had gone on before, 2 other swimmers, Jack McMillan and Kieran Bird, they had participated in the heats and they had gotten the team to the final. And in the final, 2 new swimmers came in and they helped to win the gold. So for me, there was just something special about that night. And there's something special and uplifting when you see men or people working together, when they come from different backgrounds and different upbringings, and they've all got different talents and abilities, yet they come together. And as friends, they achieve something quite unique, quite different, something quite spectacular. And that picture is a reminder to me of Psalm 133. And it's a picture of God's heart, because it's a picture that takes us back and helps us to see unity, just like there was real unity in these 4 or 6 swimmers together in achieving those goals. So there is unity that God wants us to have as brothers and sisters together. So if you've got your Bible or if you've got your phones open, just click with me or turn over page over to Psalm 133, and we'll read that in just a second. But as you're finding it, just a couple of thoughts about this psalm. First of all, it's a psalm of David. It's one of the many psalms that David wrote. But also, as you turn, you'll see that at the top there, it's a psalm. It's a psalm that is known as a song of ascent. It's in a group of 15 psalms, from Psalms 120 to 130, that are known as the songs of ascent, or another way of saying it is pilgrim psalms. These were regarded as songs or psalms to be sung and recited as the children of Israel were on pilgrimage up to Jerusalem. If you remember that in the book of Exodus, God asked, especially the men, but the families, to come to Jerusalem from wherever they were in Israel 3 times a year. They would come for various feasts, and they would come to celebrate and to sacrifice and to worship God. And as these families journeyed on foot, remember, they didn't come by car or truck or anything like that. They came on foot. And as they would journey from the northernmost town of Dan in the north, from the southernmost town of Beersheba in the south, families would meet up and they would journey together. And as they would journey together to lighten the load and to make it a brighter time, they would sing and recite these psalms. And then once they were in Jerusalem, they were there perhaps for a week, and there were great crowds staying in makeshift tents and booths, and they were fellowshipping and worshiping together. And on these occasions, they would get together and they would go up to the Temple Mount. And on their way up to the Temple Mount, they would sing these Psalms of Ascent. So these Psalms of Ascent are real celebration psalms. They're anthems, corporate anthems of people coming together in the holy city to worship God, but recognizing that God has called them together to meet and fellowship together and worship him. So just with that background, let's read together Psalm 133. It's only a short psalm, and then we'll have a little look at it. Says, verse 1 says, "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down onto the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord has commanded his blessing, life forevermore." The primary focus of Psalm 133 is found in verse 1. "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity." The theme, the focus, the highlight, the crowning point of David's psalm is unity. As David witnesses the people coming from the four corners of Israel and streaming into Jerusalem, his greatest desire expressed in this psalm is that they would be united, that they would be unified, that they would be as one. David starts off the psalm with a very interesting word. He says, "Behold, behold how good and pleasant it is." What does that word behold mean? That word means to gaze at something. It means to consider something. It means to contemplate something. To behold something, therefore, means that we must take pause. We must stop. We must take some time to take in and marvel at whatever is being looked at. Much like if we were to go to the Sistine Chapel and look at all the Michelangelo's paintings, we would stop and pause. We would behold what is above us. Just as a man or a person might stop at a solar eclipse, they stop, they pause, they look up, they watch, they behold. We take time to stop, pause, and tarry. In David's mind, in David's heart, this idea of brothers dwelling in unity, it was something worth taking time to ponder. It was something worth taking time to examine. It was something worthwhile beholding. So after he exhorts the reader or the singer or the reciter to behold this picture of unity, David now describes what unity is like. Well, he doesn't actually describe what it's like, but he describes a couple of characteristics of what it's like. David describes unity as something being good and pleasant. The word here for good is the word that is found in Genesis chapter 1. When God created the world, he said, what? On the 7 days, everything is good. On the final day, he declared everything, all of his creation, is not just good, but very good. And it's that same word here that we find unity is good. Interestingly, in Genesis chapter 2, we also read for the very first time of something that is not good. And what was not good? What did God declare as not good? God declared that man, Adam, being alone, was not good. And so what did he do? In Genesis 2, we get that wonderful account of God creating for Adam a woman. God creating for Adam a helpmate, a wife, flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone, that together they might become one. The ultimate picture of unity in scriptures. In a similar manner, unity amongst brethren, amongst brothers, is good. You and I, mankind, humanity, we were created to be in relationship. And therefore, unity is a good thing. When unity reigns, it is a blessed thing. Unity is a state of union to be commended. It's a state of union to be promoted. There is inherent goodness when brothers dwell together in unity. But not only is unity a good thing, it's a pleasant thing. There are many things in life that are good for us, aren't they? But there's plenty of things that are not always pleasant. Celery, for instance. Celery is meant to be good for me. But is it pleasant to eat? I can't stand celery. It can be cooked, it can be raw, it can be with peanut butter, it can be with salt. Can't stand celery. It's good, but it's not pleasant. What about going to the dentist? Dentist, we have to go. It's good that we go, have our teeth ticked up and all that kind of stuff. But is it pleasant? Not always. I've not met too many people that enjoy going to the dentist. But unity is one of those things that it's not only good, it's pleasant, it's delightful. Guys, we all know when we're in the midst of unity, or sometimes we might not, we might even miss it. When things are going well and things are good and we are unified, sometimes we miss it. But when it's not there, we notice it, don't we? We notice the unpleasantness when we're not together in unity. But unity is a bit like honey on buttered toast. It's pleasant. Honey is a bit like that fragrance when you enter the perfume shop. It hits you and it's pleasant. Unity adds to, enhances, and enriches one's life. Unity is a good and pleasant state for us to be in. But not only are we encouraged to behold unity, not only are we encouraged to know that it is good and is pleasant, but who is David actually addressing here when he talks about being unified? Again, verse 1, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. David here is specifically addressing the relationship of God's people one to another, both in the congregation, but specifically in the Jewish sense. David is not addressing here how Gentiles and Jews were to live together. He's not addressing how the believer and the non-believer are to dwell together. No, there are many other passages that tackle that for us in the Bible. Here in Psalm 133, David is exhorting us and pleading with us as brothers and sisters, as family, as kindred spirit, as kindred relations, to be together in unity. That's the mark of God's chosen people operating in the heart and the spirit of unity. You know, there's something very special about belonging to family, isn't there? And I'm sure that all of you will know what that is. There's something special about being kin, about having relatives. I relate to many people and love many people at many different levels. But there's something special, there's something different, there's something unique when it comes to relating to my family. They're my clan, they're my tribe, they're my people. You too will know that sense, don't you? You have that same feeling that when you're relating to your family, your children, your parents, your relatives, those that are close to you, there's a different level with which we relate to them. It's very different to, say, the person who passes by you on the street. It's very different to the person who might sit next to you on the train or the bus. Sadly, that's not everybody's experience. There are some who, when you mention a father or a mother or a sibling or a relative, it can stir up memories of pain or hurt or brokenness. And sadly, that shouldn't be. Life shouldn't be that way. God's intention is not that it be that way. And that's why he encourages us. That's why he encouraged the nation of Israel. That's why David, at the forefront of his mind as he writes these words, encourages people that as they gather, as they come together to live and worship as one, to do so, recognizing that they are family, recognizing that they are one another's brothers, sisters, that they are family together, and then in so doing, to do it in that heart and spirit of unity. Just as we come to a close then on verse 1, just a quick word or quick thought on that very word, unity. The Hebrew word there is yashab. I hope I'm pronouncing it the right way, yashab. Yashab implies not just a dwelling together in unity for a week or two. And you have to remember that's what the Israelites were doing. You know, they would come to they would come to Jerusalem. They'd spend a week there. and then they would go back home. They would go back to their place of residence. So it's not just unity. That word yashab doesn't just mean unity for a short period of time. No, it means unity over the long duration. The idea is not just to survive family relationships during brief reunions, but it's to really enjoy, it's to really embrace one another as we get together, as often as we meet up. You've probably heard that saying, haven't you? Some are a blessing when they come, others are a blessing when they go. Unity must overlook both of those different perspectives. We are kindred, we are family. In David's mind, there was to be an enduring sense of unity. It's not a flash in the pan, nod your head of civility. It was a real heart of unity. So verse 1, when God's people live in unity, it's an idea worthy to behold. It's an idea, it's a concept worthy to spend time thinking about and dwelling on and praying for. It's an idea and it's a concept that is good and it's pleasant. And it's also an idea and a concept that is to endure as long as you and I are meeting together. Unity is a blessed thing. As we move on now in the psalm, we come to verses 2 and 3. And David gives us a couple of pictures of what unity is like. He gives us a couple of images of what unity looks like. Verse 2, it is like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down onto the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. In this first picture, the picture of the oil, David describes unity using an image that was very well known to the Jewish readers. It describes the moment when Aaron, who was the first and the inaugural high priest, was anointed and commissioned to his new role as the high priest. A special oil was made up, a special oil of quite expensive and very different spices were put together, and this oil was made up, and then it was poured over the head of Aaron. And as is the nature of liquid, it didn't just fall on his head, but it fell off his head, down his face, onto his beard, and down onto even his robes. Just as that anointing oil covered the face of Aaron and then overran, so unity should touch and sense and overrun through every relationship amongst the people of the Lord. Just as this special oil was used to consecrate and mark out Aaron for the special task ahead, so unity should be that consecrating mark of God's people as we relate in unity together and in relationship together. Unity should flow freely and lavishly like that oil placed on his head, but running down his face, his beard, and even onto his robes. Unity is something that should flow freely and easily and fragrantly. David's second image then, he moves a little bit away from the oil and he starts to take in the terrain of Israel. In the terrain of Israel, to the far north, is the Mount Hermon. And Mount Hermon stands at about 9,000 feet, I think it is. It's in the northern part of Israel, and it's the part where a lot of the water for Israel and Galilee especially originates. Water falls on Mount Hermon in the form of snow and rain and dew. And as it falls, it then collects together, and copious amounts of moisture then flow down into the valleys and into the hills of Galilee and into the Jordan River. This copious amounts of water then irrigate and water and keep fertile and keep lush and green all the areas of northern Israel. So Mount Hermon provides, with the dew and the snow that falls on this mountain, the lushness for the north. To the south, though, surrounding Jerusalem lies Mount Zion. Mount Zion is very different. It's a much lower mountain, and it's often very arid. It's very dry. It lacks the dew that gives Galilee in the north its life and its color. And so David takes this contrast in poetic language. David describes unity as being that life-giving dew, that though it falls on Mount Hermon, yet its blessing, its impact, its influence might even reach Mount Zion. Though the dew might fall in one place, its effect could be seen and felt in places far away. The image of dew is also just a beautiful image. Dew incorporates the images of newness and freshness. When does the dew appear? It doesn't appear at the end of the day. It always appears at the start of a day, doesn't it? Fallen dew represents a newness, a freshness. Dew also incorporates those images of life and refreshment. Fallen dew waters and nourishes the grass and the reeds and the plants and the bushes upon which it falls. So too, unity amongst believers is meant to be that same picture. It's meant to be that picture of freshness, of newness, of life being brought day by day. It's a blessing to those who are a part of it. There is life and blessing when God's people dwell together in unity. Which brings us to the last verse of Psalm 133. David concludes this psalm with these words, "For there the Lord commanded the blessing, life forevermore." There's a very real sense in which God's blessing flows down on those who choose to live in unity. We do have a choice to make. We can choose to live in unity, or we can choose to live in disunity. David's encouragement is to live in unity and knowing that that is the place where God commands a blessing. It seems as if where God is saying that when his saints dwell together in unity, he can't do anything else but bless it. You could even take it a step further and say he commands or he ordains his blessing when brothers and sisters, where people of Duckenfield Congregational Church, when people from Bethel Church, when we dwell together in unity. He can't do anything else but bless it. He has to bless it. And then I like that last phrase that David writes there for us, life forevermore. David is expressing that when brothers live together in unity, it's like a little glimpse of heaven here on earth. We know already what heaven is going to be like. It's going to be that perfect place, isn't it? No sin, no selfishness to mar the landscape, no pride and conceit to damage relationships. But when we get to heaven, when we reach that heavenly Jerusalem, when we reach that eternal Zion, and there we shall dwell forever with one another, what state will we be in? Everyone will be together, living in perfect harmony, in perfect unity. What an image that is. Life forevermore. Life forevermore. So that's David's psalm. That's David's song of ascent. That's a celebration of unity. And it was a song that was very well known to the Jewish people, and it was sung frequently. But what is unity? What does unity look like? David's given us a couple of pictures. When we talked a little bit about unity a while ago at our church in Bethel, one of the ladies of our church, she described unity a bit like this. It's a bit like an orchestra. That in an orchestra, you have this wide array of instruments, don't you? And each of those instruments sits perhaps in a certain section of the orchestra. So you've got the percussion section, you've got the woodwind section, you've got the string section, you've got the brass section. There are probably other sections that I've missed out. But you've got all these different sections, and these sections are made up of instruments of different sizes and different tunes, etc. But together, as they play the tunes, as they play the melodies, they delight the ear, they lift they lift the mood. They entice you to tap your feet and clap your hands and nod your head and sway to the music. The instruments are playing in time, in tune, as one. And that's just a wonderful practical illustration of what unity looks like as well, that image of the orchestra. But the New Testament gives us some perhaps practical examples or practical characteristics, attributes of what unity looks like. In Philippians chapter 2, in the first few verses, Paul describes unity using these words: being of the same mind, being of one accord, being of one mind, having the same love, looking out for the interests of others. That's Paul's breakdown on unity. In Ephesians 4, he gives a couple of other attributes that we could look at and think about. Other markers of unity: humility, gentleness, patience. Once again, bearing with one another in love. Peter himself too gets in on the action. In 2 Peter chapter 3, Peter identifies unity in these terms: being sympathetic towards one another, being tender-hearted towards one another, being humble-minded before one another. Any member of any team knows the importance and the values of those different attributes. Whether it be a sports team, just like the swim team, be it a medical team, perhaps working in surgery, operating together, surgery in an operating theater, be it a NASA team launching a satellite. These teams all know that unity is so important. It's the coming together of different skills, different backgrounds, different experiences, different vocations, different callings, different educations, and sometimes even different opinions, coming together but being as one. Each one contributing from his or her own set of skills and knowledge and understanding for the purpose of common good. Unity is a blessed thing as people come together like that. In those passages of Philippians and Ephesians and 2 Peter, it's also interesting to note what Peter and Paul especially highlight things to avoid. Peter and Paul identified things that we are to skip or to miss out. They talked about things that would disrupt brotherly unity. Some of the things that they mentioned are these: selfish ambition, conceit or vain pride, self-interest, evil tongues, deceitful lips. And perhaps you could add to that list. I could add to that list. It's not an exclusive list. It's not a comprehensive list. There are other things to it. But Peter, Paul would encourage us, exhort us, don't do those things that would disrupt or interfere with that unity. Brothers, dwelling in unity takes a lot of effort to attain, but it doesn't take much to destroy it, does it? It's hard work to get there and to attain it, but it doesn't take much to destroy it. May we take caution as we look to be and work in unity with one another. So David's exhortation, Paul's exhortation, Peter's exhortation is that we as God's people dwell together in unity. So as we come to a bit of a close here, how could we apply this psalm to our lives today? How could you guys as Duckenfield Congregational Church perhaps apply this to yourselves today? How could, as I take this back to my church, back at Bethel and Bolton, how could I apply it to us? Well, 3 thoughts that we can perhaps think about and consider. First thought is this: may we realize that we are too on a pilgrimage. That we are on a pilgrimage. We are just aliens and strangers on this earth. Our eternal home, and we've already talked and sung about it this morning, our eternal home is in heaven. We're awaiting that time when we will get to heaven. And we will get there one day. But in the meantime, God calls us as his sons and daughters, as his dearly loved children, as his chosen one, as his church, to sojourn together with him and with one another in unity, a unity of the saints. And may we recognize that in our pilgrimage to heaven, that our task, our life will be much, much easier as we work and operate in that spirit of unity. We pilgrim together in that spirit of unity. Second thought, just to be thinking about and considering, is to play our part in maintaining the unity of the saints. May we patiently, sincerely, and fervently love our brothers and sisters from the heart. May we put others' needs before ourselves. May we be tender-hearted and sympathetic towards one another. May we live with one mind, one heart, one purpose as believers in honoring God. And may we humble ourselves before one another and before Him. On the other side of that coin, may we strive to avoid those things that have the traits of division and disunity. May we avoid worldly ambition that would interrupt that unity. May we avoid selfishness. May we flee from vain pride and conceit. May no unclean words be on our lips. May we keep our lips pure and right. Those vices that tear down and destroy, may we avoid in the goal and the task of keeping and building and developing unity of the brethren. And the last thought is this. May our unity, may the unity here at Duckenfield Congregational Church, may it be a witness to the world. That as we live and as you live in this community where there's much perhaps disunity, there's despair, there's darkness, there's discouragement, may our unity, may your unity be like that fragrant oil, that it reaches to the outermost parts, that it doesn't just sit on top, but it flows down liberally and freely, and even reaches into the most broken and the most damaged of hearts, and helps them to have hope in this world. May your unity, may our unity together as brothers and sisters, may it be like that life-giving dew that settles on those around us, that through our unity the world would see the beauty of Christ, that through our unity the world might come to know the salvation of Christ, and that through our unity others not yet of this family, not yet in our church, would join us, would come to know Christ, give their lives to Him, and then join us on that pilgrimage into eternity. Life forevermore. Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. For there the Lord has commanded His blessing, life forevermore. Let's pray, and I'll just hand over. Father, just say thank you for that wonderful image of unity in the church. God, I pray for Duckenfield Congregational Church. Lord, as I just walk in, I do just get that sense of unity. I do just get that sense of brotherly love. But Lord, where that is put to the test, I just pray that each one would learn what they need to do to contribute to that unity. Lord, I pray that each one would have a heart that desires unity above all, and that in that unity it is an example to the world, and it's an example to them. Lord, it helps them and it helps us endure in this pilgrimage to heaven with greater joy, greater faith, greater peace. God, unity is not always easy. Unity is often tested. But Lord, just give us that resolve to hold strong and hold fast to it so that you are glorified, so that you are honored. And Lord, as that takes place, you then, that place, command a great blessing, life forevermore. Thank you.